Hello and welcome to the EDFL Web TV Podcast. Teo Pellizzeri, my name, and great to have Adam Sarakoglu back in the pod this week.
Good to be back, Teo, and there's a few things we didn't mention on camera. We'll get stuck into that.
We certainly will. Adam Russell is here as well. Adam, you were around the grounds this week in Essendon 4 Division 1, so we'll go in depth on your game in a moment, but great to have you back.
Thanks for having me, Teo. Very keen.
And Claire Varley is here as well. Claire, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with our match for broadcast at the weekend. It was Craigieburn and Essendon Doutta Stars at Nipper Jordan, and the home team with a big, impressive win. Before we talk about the on-field stuff, let's go to the elephant in the room. The ASADA testers that were there, 2 players from each team. Before we talk about why this may have came about, let's start with perhaps the big picture question, which is, should footballers at suburban level be subject to these tests? And just how surprised are we that this happened at the weekend?
In principle, yes, but we've heard some talk about the costs of it. Surely, if it's going to cost 5 figures to be testing one player, speculatively, then surely you're going to go at least someone that's semi-professional, not someone at community level. That's where the real surprise is.
Claire Varley, you were over in the rooms as clubs scrambled and dealt with the situation. They complied. No one denied the drug testers, and I understand that it would have been 2-year bans potentially for anyone that did turn the testers away without submitting a sample. But what was it like? Was it chaos in the rooms? I understand that both club presidents knew by half-time that ASADA testers were there. I found out during the second quarter that they'd arrived at the ground, but what were your hands-on impressions over there watching it all unfold in the rooms?
Yeah, I wouldn't say there was chaos, but I would say that the clubs definitely seemed annoyed, and they seemed irritated by the concept that they were meant to believe this was random. Everyone seemed to believe it wasn't random.
Adam Russell, your thoughts. Should footballers at this level of footy be subject to drug tests and the ASADA code? For anyone that doesn't know, of course, the EDFL is answers to AFL Victoria. The AFL Victoria answers to the AFL. AFL subscribes to ASADA and WADA, and everything is passed down the chain, even to this level of football.
I think, despite the costs that are associated with these sort of testings and sending people out to football clubs, I think there's definitely a place for drug testing in local levels of football. I think drug doping, it goes against the integrity of sport, and I think that's what we want to uphold more than anything, because it's a game that we love and the integrity is so important. So if to keep that integrity, drug testing is required, I don't mind it.
Now, the angle of some of the reporting as to why this test took place is a little bit more politically sensitive, so we'll briefly touch on this, but we need to mention it. It has been a big story this week. Essendon Doutta Stars, coached by former Essendon staff member Dean Wallace, had the man seemingly at the centre of this whole saga, Stephen Dank, who actually found out he'd been banned by the AFL moments after speaking on stage at the Essendon Doutta Stars business luncheon a week prior. It's easy to put some dots out there, and plenty of people, media and supporters alike, have been happy to join those dots. How seriously do we have to perhaps look at this as a one-off purely because of the Dank connection, as opposed to ASADA genuinely wanting to infiltrate local football and start testing here on a regular basis?
We will see what the next move is from ASADA and the drug testers. If they are actually going to go after local footy, they might go to the Eastern League next weekend, guys, or they might go to Riddle the week after that. We will see what happens. But for me, there's just too many coincidences for this to have been a randomly picked game. There's just too much there. The fact that Douta's had Dank a couple of weeks ago, the fact that you've got a few cloaks running around for Craigieburn, and they've still got a brother that's in the AFL and a very high-profile player he is as well. I'm not going to buy for 1 second that this was a randomly picked game.
Adam Russell.
Yeah, by no means was it random. I think it was definitely calculated. They saw that Dank was at the club and they've targeted Doutta Stars as a result. So I think the only way we can confirm that, though, is we'll see where Dank goes next and see if that same sort of scenario happens where if Dank goes to another club to do, whether it's a speech or whatnot.
Yeah, sportsman's night or a business luncheon.
Yeah, whether that the same club gets touched.
It's true. Of course, the EDFL knew that Dank was definitely speaking, and we, as a league, we're not going to interfere with the club's affairs. Certainly didn't shout from the rooftops, hey, Douta's have got Dank coming. But I mean, we mentioned it on the EDFL Match of the Day a day after it happened. It happened on a Friday. We spoke about it on the last Saturday. And then Adam Sarakoglu, a week passed, and we actually thought it had come and gone without any major incident. Of course, in 2014, Riddle Bombers from the Riddle League had Dank come and speak at their luncheon. The AFL publicly told them not to have Dank speak. Riddle Bombers president told the AFL where to go. So maybe there's also an element here of not wanting to turn Dank into some sort of celebrity that can go and cash in on the Sportsman's Tour by a Sportsman's Night Tour by speaking at clubs. It could be an element of that connected to it as well.
Yeah, you might want to look at innocence or proven guilty, or that sort of stuff. As far as I was concerned, obviously, he probably already is a guilty man. If Douttas should not be surprised that there's been fallout. You're going to send Mike Sheehan to interview Dank live on stage, and obviously do it for commercial purposes. I would not be complaining too much if there's been some fallout.
Now, what I will say about Douttas is that, in spite of perhaps the negative publicity that has afflicted them, is that they were excellent hosts at the weekend, and they are a smart club in that they realise that even if you've got issues with footy ops or the umpires or governance of the EDFL, not to take it out on the media team. So, on one hand, they may have brought some heat upon themselves with Dank speaking at their club, but on the other hand, they're a very smart, respectful club, a great host, and we as a media team want to say thank you for the excellent job they did having us come down there with the broadcast at the weekend. And by no means are we having a go at Douttas. It was a pleasure to be there, and we'll happily go back to Nipper Jordan in the future. Now, let's move on to the other games in Essendon Forward Division 1. West Meadows 15-13-103 to Glenroy 8-9-57. Adam Russell, you and I were discussing which game you might head to for Around the Grounds at the weekend. You said, what about Aberfeldy versus Avondale?
Yeah.
That one was not close. However, this one was for 3 quarters, but then it wasn't in the end. 6-1 in the final quarter. So, did Glenroy just fall away, or did West Meadows decide enough's enough, we need to shake these guys off?
Well, Glenroy were very impressive in that first half. They were a point up at half time. It was wet and windy down at West Meadows, and you see it so often. The team kicking with the wind breaks away, and then in the second quarter, the team claws it back. But in that third quarter, it was the premiership quarter, they call it. West Meadows, kicking against the wind. They had 9 scoring shots to 4, and it was just that quarter. Coming into the start of the fourth quarter, Glenroy, they had to attack the game, and as a result, West Meadows were able to score some sort of junk time goals and really just break away.
Did they have a matchup, Glenroy, for Luke Wilson? Because he was not prominent in the Oak Park game the week before. Oak Park do have some good-sized, tall defenders that can shut down good forwards, but did they have a Glenroy just a size mismatch, or a situation where Wilson was able to escape either in pack marks or on the lead? I mean, I'm genuinely interested as to basically the breakdown of the West Meadows goal scorers here, because Mullen's I say only 3, but in a win you'd probably expect him to be 5+, and instead they've had someone else stand up for them.
Yeah, well, both Wilson and Mullen, it was the second half that really, when they broke it away, Wilson kicked 5 goals, 4 of them were in the second half. Mullen's kicked 3 goals. 2 of them were in the last quarter. The Glenroy, they had a couple of guys sort of rotating in that back line. There was Dan Barracat, Tanner Nilsson, Lachlan Cox, Taylor Griffin. Not really as sort of key position defenders, but they were trying to throw maybe a third number to try cut out Wilson, but he was pretty dominant on the day. And when you had someone like Cam Truan as well, he kicked the 2 goals, and he was sort of not the dominant forward, but he was a presenting forward. So they couldn't sort of focus their efforts onto one player, or else someone else gets off the leash.
Let's move on in Essendon for Division 1 to Oak Park against East Keilor. This was a draw. Great result for East Keilor. Would have been better if they'd held on to win, though. They were in front. I understand that Oak Park was the last team to score after coming from behind in the final quarter. And Adam, East Keilor kicked 2 more goals than Oak Park, and yet still walked away with only the 2 points. You saw them very disappointing against Hillside 2 weeks ago, but they responded. It's better signs for East Keilor as they battle against relegation, because this result obviously keeps them off the bottom of the ladder at Glenroy's expense.
Yeah, it's always good to see a team bounce back after a disappointing loss, and they were certainly disappointing against Hillside. Oak Park kicked themselves out of the game a little bit, 9-18. 9-18. But yeah, East Keilor, they can probably take a lot away from that game, and they're off the bottom of the ladder and they'll be pretty happy with that.
Claire Varley, Steve Vernon, our Sportsmoves best on ground the previous week, he continued his good form with 4 goals for Oak Park, but no other multiple goal kickers. Are you surprised that Oak Park were held by East Keilor, or given the number of injuries and the surprise that West Meadows game was it inevitable that there may be some sort of emotional letdown off the back of what was really a bit of a landmark win in the season for them the week before?
Yeah, I'm not really surprised about the result this week. I think what we saw was kind of a really special and what you say unexpected kind of achievement, and I think coming down from that, it was probably not going to reach those kinds of heights 2 weeks in a row.
Now, Adam Sarakoglu, let's finish with Tullamarine and Taylors Lakes in Division 1. And this, again, was close for 3 quarters, and then Tulla really broke it open after half-time, but particularly in the final quarter to get away from Taylors Lakes, who will be disappointed. Ultimately, they were right in this, only a goal down at half-time, and yet Tullamarine had the quality to get away. Nice spread of multiple goal kickers for them. And really, Tulla roll on towards the top 4, and Taylors Lakes miss perhaps an opportunity to separate themselves from that relegation pack of teams.
We're looking for, I suppose, the challengers to the top 2 at the moment, and Tulla just keep proving their worth and did a job that was required, basically. I don't think they had to smash Taylors Lakes to prove any points or anything like that. I think Taylors Lakes, as it is, are trying to prove that they're not a cellar dweller, so I think it's a result that's probably fair enough. But look, Taylors Lakes, we know they're starting to try and bring some new guys into the side. They're starting to look towards the future. Is what you have to do, I suppose. Even if they do somehow get relegated this year, then they're still going to have to try and find some young talent to get them through Division 2. If that happens, I don't think it will. But either way, they've got to start looking to the future. And that's what they've done in this particular game, looking at some of the names down the list. And they certainly took it up to Tulla. So good all-round game, I suppose.
Tips are on camera for the coming weekend, so make sure you click through to the EDFL YouTube channel. You're listening to the EDFL Web TV Podcast. If you've clicked through to this segment, it's now time for Strathmore Community Bank Division 2. And we'll start with the most important game as far as sorting out the top 4. We're none the wiser as to who's going to make it, but Moonee Valley beaten by Coburg Districts. They went to Cole Reserve. They were goalless in the first quarter. 6 goals to none really put Coburg Districts on their way, and Moonee Valley couldn't bridge the gap for the rest of the afternoon. Storer kicked 4 for Coburg Districts. Trent Storer, the ruckman. They had a good spread of goal kickers. Chris Metcher, the former Burnside Heights player who transferred mid-season, kicked a couple of goals. So that's an interesting name to have popped up. He didn't play in the radio game that we were at against Roxburgh Park a few weeks earlier. Coburg Districts getting the job done. Moonee Valley only percentage inside the top 4 at the moment. So all of a sudden, their season is starting to slide in the wrong direction, Adam Sarakoglu, and of course, heading into a game against Hadfield this weekend, it's probably going to get tougher before it gets easier for them.
Yeah, Hadfield look unstoppable at the moment, but again, that Craigieburn mentality we spoke about on camera, perhaps don't want to go into the finals undefeated. We'll see what happens there. But the Valley, it was just a personnel issue on the weekend. They didn't have enough there. I still think the best 22 of Moonee Valley beats the best 22 of Coburg Districts, but at the same time, Districts are sort of desperate to prove themselves at the moment because they're just too up and down.
Right now, we have a 5-way tie of teams on 8 wins and 4 losses. Roxburgh Park, Coburg Districts, Moonee Valley and Jacana. Roxburgh Park 200%, and then it's actually starting to compress here. Coburg Districts 143, Moonee Valley 131, and Jacana 126. So things are actually starting to become really close. We've got a genuine 4-way battle for 3 spots in the finals at the moment. And Jacana beat Keilor Park by 110 points at the weekend, 5 more for Bryce Kimolitis, 5 more for Chris Johnson, who's playing a dominant role. Bo Nime, best on ground. Keilor Park are really struggling at the moment, so let's not get carried away. But Jacana, to boost their percentage as much as they have with the 200-point win against Burnside Heights, 110 points against Keilor Park, I didn't think they'd actually bridge the gap to the other 2 teams, and yet here they are with a realistic chance that it could come down to percentage, and they won't have to win an extra game than some of these other teams.
Yeah, maybe. Really good win by Jacana. They just got to try and build that percentage a little bit, I guess. And look, as far as Keilor Park's concerned, it's just, I suppose, small steps, get through the end of the year and then reassess.
Now let's look at Roxburgh Park against Burnside Heights very briefly. 168-30. It wasn't close after 7 goals to none. Great to see Kyle Aspel, who's still eligible for the under-18s, yet another young player who's been thrown a senior opportunity. He kicked a couple of goals, and Casa, who was really good in the broadcast game, kicked 4 here. Walker back in with 3, which is good to see, and of course Dave Kennedy, who's not here with us this afternoon, his man Margariti kicked a couple of goals. But really, just tick the box and move on here for Roxburgh Park. There's only so much you can prove against Burnside Heights, and we talk about percentage. They are more than 50% better than all the other 8 and 4 teams, so at the very least they kept that sort of arm's length gap from the rest of the chasing pack.
All I've got to say is tick.
Tick, move on. All right, and the last game of the weekend was Hatfield against East Sunbury. This is maybe the good news story of the week. I know they had their score doubled, exactly 112-56, but signs of increased competitiveness here from East Sunbury, which is good news for them.
Either that or Hadfield just...
finally had an off day.
I wouldn't say an off day.
Against the right team.
Wouldn't say an off day, perhaps just foot off the pedal, maybe 80%. I don't want to be too downtrodden about East Sunbury, but we're actually fearful that this one might be 200 considering what Hadfield's done recently. So, again, tick. Well done to both sides, and we'll move on to the next game, Teo.
We won't spend too long in Essendon, Strathmore Community Bank Division 2 this week because, as we said, the results weren't that close. Tips are on camera. Click through to the EDFL YouTube channel to watch the on-camera segment for predictions for this weekend. Let's go to Strathmore Community Bank Premier Division. And Adam Russell, you have very much been a supporter of Strathmore's claim to 4th spot this year. They arrive at this blockbuster game with Pascoe Vale coming up this weekend with every chance of getting back into the top 4, but their form isn't very good, and again, struggling for 3 quarters against Airport West, and they ended up winning by an arm's length margin. 11 goals 20 to 5-17. Very inaccurate for both teams at Hanson Reserve. But Strathmore, they've got a lot of young players in at the moment. The balance of youth and experience probably is a little bit more young than some of the other top contenders at the moment. They're finding ways to win. Are you buoyed enough out of this one that they can actually roll Pascoe Vale this weekend and return to the top 4 mix?
Well, just touching on last week's result, they kicked 8 behinds in that first quarter. It'd be interesting to see if it was weather affected or if it was just poor skills. But I think the results in the last few weeks, Pascoe Vale losing to Keilor and Avondale Heights, I think Strathmore can take a lot of confidence out of that. And Pascoe Vale, they're not Aberfeldy standard, obviously, but they were looking like a dominant force. But they've been beaten 2 weeks in a row now. Ben Warren's been kept goalless. Maybe Strathmore see this as a winnable game.
I know there were a few retirements last year and a couple of other players haven't been available this year for Strathmore, but they are putting out a side right now week in, week out, especially lately and especially against Airport West on Saturday, that is largely similar to the Premiership side last year. So if they take that to Pascoe Vale, they are a hot show.
Now let's turn our attention to Greenvale's win against West Coburg. Of course, I think the main thing we're looking for against West Coburg here is the margin getting closer than the first time around. It certainly was against Greenvale. They've got Aberfeldy coming up this weekend, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. Aberfeldy's form is pretty fearsome, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But is there much really to say here other than Greenvale continue to win and really remain in the mix for second place? If they keep winning and Pascoe Vale keep dropping games, Strathmore have got to make a run. Keilor is still behind Greenvale in this respect. Is second place Greenvale's for the taking, or is it really just going to come down to that second head-to-head against Pascoe Vale?
Oh, yeah, we'll see what happens in that particular game. The way Aberfeldy's going, I don't think it probably matters who comes second right now, I'll tell you. As far as this game was concerned, again, West Coburg have been showing signs of improvement. I still think they're a very, very good, talented young side, and they took it up to Greenvale, who had a few 18s in, it seems, because there's a few names there that we don't recognise. So, again, well done, West Coburg, but Greenvale's too good in the end. We're not too surprised by that.
We spoke about Pascoe Vale versus Keilor at length on camera, so just a quick word, Adam Russell. Keilor really signalling their intentions, and after Adam and I had put the heat on them to find multiple avenues for goal, 5 for Jack Kennedy, 5 for Ryan Bathy, 3 for Dylan Joyce. That is the sort of spread of goal kickers that a premier team can confidently say, throw David Gordis in there as well in the future, we can go into a final and win if we're getting that sort of even spread across the board. The problem is they hadn't had that. all of a sudden in the one game that they do have multiple avenues to goal, Pascoe Vale can't go with them, and they have a very good win.
Yeah, very promising signs there down at Keilor. You mentioned earlier how confident I was in Strathmore, but I think with Keilor upping their standard recently, I think that place for fourth could be a strong battle, but I think Keilor might even set their sights on third.
Well, Adam Seracoglu, you want to weigh in on this one? Is there a risk that Greenvale and Paco can leave the door open for Keilor to come in and potentially take third?
Mathematically, it's going to be pretty hard. The form will probably hold steady for the rest of the year. But it's just quickly, as far as Keilor's concerned, we keep saying that the tall timber's getting it done each week. But you look at the list of goal kickers, and the Mosquito fleet stood up in this game and kicked some goals for Keilor. So that's good to see that they've got some spread and some variety going forward, because that has been the major question mark this year.
All right, Northern Saints' agonising loss to Maribyrnong Park, just 2 points. In the end, they were right up to their ears in this one. Maribyrnong Park basically getting out of jail. A young team with a few holes in it, and Northern Saints were able to really take it up to them and challenge them. Fort Caruso, best for his team. Basman Abdul Wahed continues to wind back the clock and produce some good footy. We're watching Northern Saints this weekend based on this performance, but Adam Russell, you were there last time they played Airport West, and it was just a total disaster. What do Northern Saints need to do differently this time around to beat Airport West? And how can they harness this good form against Maribyrnong Park and not let it slip like they did last time around at Hanson Reserve?
I think they just got to keep their mouth shut. That's what ultimately led to their demise last time against Airport West. They didn't keep their heads, and they got a bit lippy at the match officials. And, you know, it's good to see Fort Caruso and Basman in good form, because they were maybe one of the only guys that stood up in that performance earlier in the year. So I'm pretty keen for this contest, and I think Northern Saints will give it a good crack.
I think I've still got a fair few of their premiership players from 2013. There's been some injuries. There's a couple of guys that have gone, namely to Hillside and maybe other clubs as well. But the problem with the Northern Saints is, Teo, I'll ask you this: is it too unfair to suggest that Fort Caruso to the Northern Saints is what Gary Ablett is to the Gold Coast Suns?
Not at all. I mean, I suppose that there was Fort and Nat. So before Nat did his knee, you had two superstars that might have been a different comparison. But right now, yeah, it probably is that level of dependence on him to produce week in, week out for the team.
And there's your frustration for Steve Kristevsky. He's got to try and unearth some of these guys that are going to step up. We look through the names. We'll see them live on Saturday as well. We'll see who is stepping up to help Fort. But I think it's been a problem for a lot of the year. And just look through that depth in the 18s, and we'll see if anyone can give him some support.
And last game on the pod, Claire, I'm going to come to you for this. Aberfeldy, 32 goals, 6, 198 to Avondale Heights, 8856. Are we wasting our time talking about the other 9 teams in Premier Division right now? Is it just Aberfeldy that far ahead? Because I ask because you were at last year's grand final, and you would have seen that Aberfeldy perhaps blew a great chance to win. And that those mental demons from losing the last 2 grand finals is pretty much the only reason why we aren't talking about this team like they've won the premiership already. Because, to be honest, we don't trust them until they win it. So, as someone who's was there last year but is more or less new to the league week in, week out this year, what are your impressions of Aberfeldy, given that perhaps we're looking at it through the view of a historical perspective, and maybe you've brought a fresh pair of eyes to the situation? Are they that far ahead of everyone else that it's not competitive?
Look, coming into it, I can understand where you're all coming from with their back-to-back premiership defeats, and I'm just wondering if they were going to get brought down again. You say those mental demons, but from the impressions I'm getting from this season, those mental demons are pushing them forward and making them want to prove to everyone that they can actually do it. We saw them against Pascoe Vale, and I came out of that game thinking that there was no doubt they were going to win the premiership. So I guess we'll see.
This was already a group that did not need any topping off, and then they bring in Angus Graham. There is a massive gulf between them and the rest right now. It's unfortunate to say, because we want the premiership race to be more competitive than it looks, but as we know, that's going to be the main storyline now for the rest of the year. If Abbas do go through undefeated and obviously get to the grand final in the best form, just those mental demons, which is so much of this game, and that's why we love it as well.
What is there actually to work on here? I mean, they've kicked 32 goals, 6. That's incredibly accurate. They've won by 142 points against the team that finished second on the ladder last year and was a finalist and still has a very good team on paper. Really, are they just fighting with themselves for the chance to be in the best 22? Is that all that's left to prove between now and the finals?
Oh, to be honest, Teo, right now is all about preparing for the finals for mine. You don't want to be peaking too early. There are so many examples of the teams that we agree, at all levels of footy, that we agree are the best team, but they don't end up winning the flag because they did not peak by the time they had to, which was the final day of the season. So that for mine would be one of the main concerns for Adam Potter right now. We don't want to be playing our best footy yet, boys, and we probably don't have to now either because we're so far ahead of the competition on the ladder. It's going to take some beating for us to even be knocked off the top of the ladder. So right now is the I suppose you're entering the fine-tuning part of it, and any chinks in the armour that could potentially be there, anything that's is standing out in terms of what's going wrong in the game plan. Now's the time to iron those things out, and you want to be getting it right by the time finals come around. For mine, that should be the focus for Abbas.
All right, well, that's it for the EDFL Web TV podcast. The tips for Premier Division this weekend are in the on-camera segment, hosted by yourself, of course, Claire Varley. Thank you for joining us in the pod this week.
Thank you.
Adam Russell, you'll be joining us at Northern Saints versus Airport West this weekend. Look forward to seeing you at the game.
Yeah, looking forward to the return fixture.
And Adam Sarakoglu, thanks for your company once again. Big weekend coming up, but there's never a dull moment in the EDFL. I wonder what controversy or drama awaits us this weekend. Hopefully, we will just be talking about some good footy.
Always like heading out to Charles Martin Reserve, one of my favourite grounds, and hopefully good Northern Saints terms up. I'm looking forward to see Airport West as well, but we know the Saints can turn it on when they get going, so hopefully it's a good, exciting game.
I'll leave you with this. Because they haven't played the same number of games, obviously the points for and against is a little bit different, but Airport West this season are averaging 63 points per game. Northern Saints are averaging 62.9 points per game. I'm going to put it on the record right now. It's going to be just like when Essendon Doutta Stars played Taylors Lakes back in 2011 when it was the relegation battle in exactly the same situation. One team on 1 win, one team on 0 wins, and it was to decide who goes down effectively. We're going to have a draw, just like 2011.
Okay, we'll see what happens.
That's it for the EDFL Web TV podcast. My name's Teo Pellizzeri. Make sure you subscribe. You get the videos as soon as they go online, right here on the EDFL YouTube channel. Well, great work by Adrian Jamison, who has grabbed our Sportsmoves best on ground for us. And Charles Lill has joined us in the commentary box here for our post-game show. Congratulations on the result, first and foremost. A huge win. First team to beat Craigieburn this year, and also a little bit of revenge for what happened the first time around. Tell us your thoughts on the performance today. It really was extraordinary to see Essendon Doutta Stars dominate the way that they did in a battle of the top two.
Oh, look, we were super excited with the win, but we've been confident ever since that first match that we can match it with the best. So I guess all the boys were just really proud that we were able to put it together on a big day for the club.
So the post-match address there from the coaching staff and Dean Wallace, I mean, was it a pat on the back and well done, or is he immediately trying to put the brakes on and keep people's feet on the ground, given that you did win by 68 points in the end?
Oh, it's always a bit of a balance, I think. There was certainly a big pat on the back to begin with, but he was very big on let's make sure we get down on Tuesday and get on the track and keep looking to improve heading towards the end of the year.
Hey, Charles, congratulations on the win and well done on your performance. Interested to see you move into the midfield as a more of a roving role. We saw you take a few hit-outs as well, but what's your optimum position? Where do you enjoy playing your footy the most?
Look, I probably consider myself a bit of a utility. I've been thrown around in all sorts of positions throughout my career. I love the freedom of the midfield, but looking forward, I think the half-back line somewhere is probably where I am able to utilise my reading of the play and my kicking skills and that sort of thing.
Have you modelled yourself on a certain player? We were trying to work out what type of play you played like and comparing it to an AFL player, but is there a certain player you try and model yourself on?
Probably my two favourite players are Robert Murphy from the Doggies and Brennan Goddard at Essendon. So I love the way they distribute the ball and get on the outside and make good decisions. So I don't particularly model myself on anyone, but they would be my two favourite players.
I'm guessing you're a young man, but you reminded us of Premiership player from the Eagles, Rowan Jones, actually, as well, with just the movement and the way you go about your footy. That is a compliment, by the way. He was a Premiership player, played more than 150 games, don't get us wrong. But what about the team? I mean, you're missing so many. You've got so many injuries at the moment. What's it like at training to see guys that have, broken jaws and ligament and muscle injuries all limping around, knowing that the depth is there and everyone is on notice for when they get fit, that no one's guaranteed a spot in this 22?
Oh, look, what it does is creates a fantastic competitive spirit at training. All the boys are really keen to work hard together, and I mean, obviously you're always trying to play in the highest level you can, but I think the whole club just wants the team to do as well as they can, and no matter who plays, everyone's pretty happy about that.
It is local footy, but how much homework is required before a game like today against Craigieburn? Did you get given a dossier on opposition players? Do you get given any video analysis or scouting notes, or is it still largely about you guys and not about them?
There wasn't any video analysis, but we have a very diligent coaching panel who I think have put a lot of homework into Craigieburn and highlighted a couple of their set plays and a couple of players we needed to watch out for, and I think as a general rule our players stuck to the plan pretty well, and maybe that's what came to the fore at the end of the day.
Just talking on those matchups, it must have been a bit of a compliment, or you might have been a little bit flattered when Jason Cloke came to you in the midfield to try and sort of stop your run as a midfield. Did you have a matchup per se, though, going into the match?
Not specifically. They trust me to balance my accountability with my attacking side of the game. I try to play that sweeping role, and they have a very good ruckman, obviously, who was on top for most of the day, so that's probably my role to try and curb his influence a bit. And to be honest, I didn't particularly notice Jason going to me, but if that's what you noticed, then...
So I thought that was an interesting coaching move, because he's actually thought, well, we'll put a big bloke on a big bloke, because as we said in the box, you're a 6'1", 6'2" on baller, which you don't see a lot of at this level. So it was I mean, that's a credit to you, that they thought, well, let's try and stop him this way.
Now, tell us your story. What brought you to Doutta Stars, and where are you originally from?
It's an interesting story. I was actually a Perth boy up until this year, so I've only been in Victoria for 4 or 5 months now. I did a little bit of pre-season training at Essendon and almost got picked up. I didn't, so they invited me over to play in their VFL squad. I've only played one game there this year, and the VFL side are on top of the ladder at this point and playing very good footy, so it's pretty competitive in there. But it was the Dean Wallace connection that's got me down here, and I've tried really hard to embrace the club, and they're a good bunch of boys, and I'm really enjoying it. So.
And your future, for the foreseeable future, is it Douta's? Now that you've got skin in the game as far as the premiership race, is that your primary goal, or are you still hanging out for that VFL call to come from the next level up?
Oh, it's a balance of both. I'm certainly trying my hardest to play VFL whenever I can, but this is a very good place to fall back on, and I love playing down here, and I love the club, and obviously winning form's good form, so it's very enjoyable.
Well, it was a pleasure to watch you today, and great to see you go about your footy. Congratulations on being our Sportsmoves Best on Ground. A hoodie will be coming on the way, so congratulations. I wish we had more prizes to give you after a performance like that. And give Mitch Jensen a pat on the back, because if he'd kicked 2 more, maybe he would have nicked it off you there. But well done, and thanks for joining us on EDFL Radio.
Okay, thanks for the interview, guys. Cheers.
It has taken 12 rounds to arrive, but Peter, as you join us, we heard from the three-quarter time address that you wanted to win the last quarter. You wanted to at least stay close, but how's that left you feeling that it blew out to as big as it did in the final term?
I think it was always the capacity for that to happen when you've got a number of good players off the ground. I think we all rate Josh Young as one of the premier midfielders in the competition. You lose him in the first 10 minutes of the game, the skipper, and then obviously we lost Jace 5 or 6 minutes into the third quarter. So, I thought they fought on, pretty well in the third quarter. In the last quarter, I mean, we had 5 under 18 boys playing out there up against big-bodied Douta's team. So, I'm not surprised by it. I thought they had a crack.
No coach likes to subscribe to the theory of needing a loss, but you now have something to work with. You can now go to training and maybe deliver some home truths and give a few people a kick up the backside with justification, because the team did lose at the weekend. So do you make a positive out of the situation that you have been beaten today?
Nah, not at all. I think at the end of the day we lost 13 games of football last year. So remember, there's 17 of the boys that played all last year playing out here. The greatest fear for us is failure, isn't it? Week in, week out. So we didn't come here to lose the game. We come here to win. Sometimes the cards don't go your way.
And sorry, Peter, you finished with that one?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just have you got an update on Jason Cloak?
Well, he got a pretty bad concussion. So that's why we dragged Cam to go and see him in hospital straight away, just to make sure he was with him. And look, Jace is, he's a tough character. He got a pretty big whack last week, and he come up for this game. And he's not the sort of bloke that wants to miss a game of football. I'd love to have rested him today, based on what happened last week, but that's not the way he is. That's not who he is. So yeah, he'll be fine, mate. If he has to have a couple of weeks off, he'll have a couple of weeks off.
I want to talk about the move that you made, Jason Cloak, into the midfield there, and obviously we saw that that it was unfortunate that he went down. But is that something that you're sort of looking for? Is that bigger bodied midfielder to go in there when particularly number 75 that we just saw, Charles Lill, he was having an influence in the midfield?
He was. Look, I think all coaches have Plan B, Plan C, Plan D, and today was an opportunity for us to address the issues when we lost Tucky and the captain and Josh. So obviously we had to react and try and get some of our best footballers in around the ball. And, big body, reads the play well, has an impact amongst the young guys. So, yeah, of course, he's always an option to go on the ball.
When I was looking at the match, I thought the backline really held up quite well under the circumstances in the first half. Where did you think the game was lost? Was it
midfield? Yeah, no question. Look, I think I wasn't happy with our backs today. You say that. Okay. Douta's took I think without Kite playing, without Cade Carey playing, without Zephyr Skinner playing, they were a more medium-sized forward line, and we should have had an ability to spoil the ball today. And too many times we went in there and they were able to mark the ball. And one of our baseline measurements is how many inside 50 marks the opposition take, and if it's 15 a game, well, that's 15 too many. And today it was far too many, especially with wet, greasy conditions.
When you look at some of those numbers for them, Shiloh Smith, small midfielder, 4 goals. Mitch Jensen, midfielder, 4 goals. And then also Cronin, Blair Cronin, 2 goals, and Anderson, 2 goals. So is that defensive aspect of the midfield, is that something that you'll probably look to work on at training?
What I'd say is... look, all our midfielders have a responsibility to play defensively like they do offensively. Doutta Stars have made it pretty clear, I think, by going out and buying Zephyr Skinner just this week, that they're fair income and they're having a 100% crack at winning the flag. Well, we've worked hard through the first half of the year to get in the position we're in, so we get a crack at Douta's come first final, and the winner goes to a grand final. So... there's no whole... We continue to play young players. I don't know how many under-18s Douta's had today, but there was 5 young under-18 Craigieburn boys playing.
You did get the margin back to 26. It took until the second half to kick back-to-back goals, but then you got it from 45 back to 25 in pretty quick succession before they broke away again, Douta's, at the end of that third quarter. Did you genuinely believe that the comeback was on, or with knowing you were already 1 down, knowing that Cloak's injury pretty much ended that comeback, did the bench ever let itself believe, hang on, we're going to do it again, or was it just not enough of a run to actually start to buy into the idea that you were going to roar back into the game once again?
Well, you always believe you can win. If you don't believe you can win, you might as well just... It's very hard to motivate the footballers to go out there in the last quarter and have a crack in the game. And I think at the 3-quarter time huddle, they were up and about and were believing in what we were doing. But at the end of the day, it's a big, strong, powerful side that they've put on the park. So good luck to them, congratulations, and we look forward to meeting you again.
I want to sort of touch on that aspect of it. Obviously, it's a situation where you know that you're going to come up against them, and it's a difficult game to coach for. We had a very similar situation with West Coburg and Tullamarine in Div 1 last year. But it gave opportunities, and I thought that young Reichelt
Nathan,
was all right in the second half when he came on. And tell us about him, 16 years old, I believe.
He's turned 17. Nathan,
17, yeah.
He's obviously a first-year under-18 player. He's the nephew of Ben Johnson from Collingwood. He's obviously got a lot of pace. He's got a lot of courage. And today he certainly didn't look out of his class playing senior football for a 17-year-old. So, yeah, Nathan will be playing next week in the seniors. And we give another boy an opportunity to grow as a player.
Well, Peter, we appreciate your time after a defeat. Thank you for being generous with your comments and insights into the game. And I think we'll see you in that first final regardless. You're still top of the table, of course, by half a game. So commiserations on the result today, and look forward to speaking to you again soon on EDFL Radio.
Thanks, boys.